we talked a bit negatively about jumping into a startup from now. And I want to be honest, I want to be clear. Yes, it is most likely a bad idea and it's going to be not successful. I think it's important to be honest to the people, to not have like these rose tinted glasses and tell them, yeah, everybody's going to make it, everybody's going to be rich. It's just not the truth. But did your studies find something positive for the ones who jump into that field, especially for the employees who say, okay, I'm going to risk it, I'm going to take that job? Or is it like, nah, it's always a bad idea?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's, we found, I think, a couple of things that are really interesting that are sort of contingencies you could think about in how, in the types of effects we found. So one that I thought was really interesting is that the people who join startups that are growing really fast, they actually do a little bit better than somebody who goes and joins a large corporation. So if you're in one of those high flying startups that's, doubling in the number of employees every, 6 months or something, then you might actually be better off in a startup. I think the hard thing is at the time you're making the decision, are you able to spot that it's going to be a fast grower, or is that highly uncertain? The other thing that's I think an important caveat on this is that when we were looking at these results, it really depended on when you joined the startup. So the people who really earned less were the people who joined in just the first few employees. Like, think about employee number, 1 or 2 after the founders. By the time a startup reached about 50 employees in size, there was no penalty at all. 50.
50, okay.
Yeah. So by the time it reached that level in size, there was no penalty at all in joining a startup. I think what part of what's happening is a lot of these people are, if you join a Facebook or something in its early days, even if it doesn't go public, you're going to do just fine, right? But the problem is a lot of people are joining these app startups that maybe have one founder and it's not clear what the prospects are and they never go anywhere. And so they not only don't have kind of a successful exit from that startup, but they may also not even learn that much from the experience if it sort of never really went anywhere. And so that's a lot of what's driving this, kind of negative result for the average.
Okay, that's interesting. Have you witnessed or experienced or seen any in the data, anything like, because that's an interesting question that I had from a few people who wanted to join startups and weren't sure, because the question for someone jumping in is like, it's a small team, I'm gonna have to be jack of all trades at the beginning, of course. Yeah. So if the startup works out and they grow, are the first few employees usually being taken with them to the next stage and next stage? Like, it's a difference if I start, let's say, for example, in the marketing department as a jack of all trades, and after 5 years there are 100 people and we work with 5 agencies and I'm the CMO, then I think, of course, for the long-term success, it's good, because now I can go to a big company and work there quite high. Or is it like, now once they reach 10 or 20 or 50 employees, they will kick me out to get someone who's had it in the CV from the get-go, and I don't even get the chance to grow into that role? What is there anything you can say to that?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think of this as what I would call like maybe the rising tide effect, right? So if the company's growing, everybody who's there early gets lifted up and, kind of risen to a higher level. We don't really find much evidence for that. It actually looks like what tends to happen is more that if the company really takes off and grows, then what's going to happen is, when instead of promoting you to be the person who's now overseeing 20, 50 people in a marketing department, they bring in somebody who's experienced and has run a marketing department with 20 or 50 people, and you report to them. They probably don't fire you, and you do seem to move up a little bit faster, at least in income, than you would in a traditional company, which would be evidence that maybe you are getting promoted a little bit faster than you would have in a slower growth environment. But it's not like you become one of the, C-level, C-suite sort of executives in a large company. What tends to happen is, they bring in sort of the adults, when they reach sufficient scale.
Oh, it reminds me of two things. The first thing is the old rockets from the old way, and the ballast is just thrown off. Okay, we can't take you anymore. Sorry, we gotta get higher. Bye bye. And then it reminds me of the Peter principle, where it's like, well, we can't fire you because it would be bad for the whole group, so we're gonna sideline you somewhere, maybe with a nice title, but let as you said, now let the adults work and play and go into the corner. Here you got hush money, and that's it.
Well, and you see that a lot with founders, right? A lot of time founders, when these companies are really successful, will move into sort of a chief technical officer title, or a title that's probably a little more ceremonial than real. And then, you've got, some seasoned executives that come and are actually running the organization.
Yeah, remember, I forgot the number, but it was like, I talked to an investor and he told me like 80, don't pin me on the number, might be wrong, but it was a high number, like 80% of founders, after they take off and they get the investment from venture capital or something, are sidelined in the next 2 or 3 years if the company works out. Because they say, well, you don't have the qualities, you don't have the qualifications, you don't have the skills needed. So like, get out of the way and let us do it correctly and properly. And it's often a source of frustration for the founders, of course, as one can imagine. I mean, for the others who just
interesting. I mean, some of them, I think sometimes it's frustration, but sometimes people actually feel like once it gets to being, all about systems and reliability, and a lot of them feel like they don't even fit. So they actually are, want to, leave and go and maybe actually do the next new venture, because that's kind of more exciting, more interesting. And I think that actually points to something that we've kind of not even touched on in the conversation. We've been talking, about the money side, but I really think the reason why, people, if they're going to become a startup employee, should become an employee is not for the money. It's for, it's for being part of, this kind of creation process, which I think has its own, intrinsic satisfaction, even if it doesn't, have the same monetary reward.
If you like this clip, watch another one. And if you want to see the whole interview, click here.